Why I skip the sled test before a Hyrox race. In the warm-up area of a Hyrox race on race day, you'll see a lot of people practicing on the sled push. I don't go near it, and I'll tell you why, and I'll tell you what I do instead. Number one, it's race day. Nothing else can be done. You're ready as you can be. You do your warm-up by all accounts, but to do the sled push to me doesn't make any sense for two reasons. The first is if you push that sled, you put on the right weight for you and your division, 200 kg for male pro, 150 for male open. Female pro is 150, I think, and female open 100. And if you push that and it goes really well and it moves nice along the carpet and you're feeling great, it can give you false hope, because if you get onto the race course and you're one of the unlucky people that gets a sled that just doesn't move well, and we know this happens, you only have to look at Hyrox World Championship Chicago 2025. It's almost like a bit of a lottery out there at the moment, or it certainly was last season. I think this season will be better, but you could get a good sled lane where the sled moves well, or you could just on the day be unlucky and get a bad sled lane. So going back to your practice and your warm-up, if you push that sled and it moves great, then you'll be thinking, okay, brilliant, I've got this. What happens whenever you get to the race and you happen to get a bad lane and it doesn't move as well as it did in the warm-up? That could really throw you. So the warm-up area is completely separate to the race course. That sled and that carpet is going to be very different to the sled and carpet that you use on the race course. There could be people sweating on it. It could be faster or it could be slower. So the two of them aren't the same. It's not like a pair of kettlebells whereby they weigh what they weigh and that's consistent. So that's one reason why I don't do it. Second reason why I don't do it, it's probably the highest risk potential out of all the warm-ups. Okay, so if you're doing a warm-up and you're doing a bit of running, you could even go on the ski erg to do a bit of that. You're doing some leg stretches. You could do a little bit of farmer's carry. You could throw some wall balls. You can literally do any of the other 7 stations of Hyrox and they're less chance of giving you an injury. But the sled push, as I've said many times before, on a day-to-day basis, on our general lives, nobody's pushing a sled. The other things we are doing, we're sitting up and down from a seat, which is a squat. We're carrying our bags or shopping, which is a farmer's carry. The sled push, putting the body into that angle and position and putting all that weight on those calves. That's high risk potential because it's not something we as humans have been used to doing. You may run the risk of injuring yourself on the sled push in the warm-up before the race. And for what benefit, really? Because you can't change what sled you're going to get on the day, on the carpet. So for me, it just doesn't make sense. Do it if you want to do it. Me personally, I don't do it for those reasons. And it might just be something that you might want to think about. But again, if you do it and it works well for you, keep at it. You're there. It's not all supposed to be in your control. You've prepared, but on that day, you're going to get things that are out of your control, okay? And that's what the race is really about. It's execution. So you don't want to be adding another factor into it, such as confusing yourself in a warm-up with a sled that seems good or bad. What you really want to do is believe that you've trained for this, and now you're going to navigate your way through this race. So for example, things will come up. For example, when I do the lunges, some races I get cramps in my quads, others I don't. And that also brings back to gloves, For example, on the course, sometimes there will be chalk. Sometimes they'll run out of chalk. Sometimes there's a queue for the chalk. And even if you get to the chalk, it can be all lumpy because of the sweat and the water of everybody getting into it. Whereas if you have the gloves that we provide, then you can go into each station without ever having to stop for chalk. Okay, so that kind of takes away a lot of those variables and risk. And that's just an example of the variables that can happen on the day. Now, I'm not trying to scare people. Most of the time, you will get a fine sled lane. It'll be okay. Don't worry about it. And I think this year in the 2025-2026 season, it's going to be even better. I listened to the podcast from Rock's Life with Mo, the owner, and they said, Chicago just wasn't good enough. They made mistakes, but they and the provider of all the Hyrox equipment, Centaur, are really looking into making the sleds as consistent as possible. But that doesn't take away from the fact that I personally think that a sled push in a warm-up can be a high risk of injury, and you don't need that injury before the race. That's it. That's why I don't do the sled push during the Hyrox warm-up. I hope that's helped. If you do want my complete warm-up breakdown, please just send me a message. I'll send it to you. And if you've liked this video and content, please subscribe. It really does help. And I'll see you on the next one with more Hyrox tips and guides. Okay, thanks. Bye.